Do you think that the government should redistribute its citizens' wealth?
I don't believe so. I'd like to see a flat tax where everybody was taxed at the same percentage. Now, it would only start at a certain level of income, but that would be, I think, the fairest and the best for the economy.
Are you against farm subsidies?
I am. I'm not a farmer, but I'm certainly against them. You know, they go back to the 1930s and the New Deal. It's crazy, and a great deal of it goes to some of the biggest agribusinesses. They don't need that kind of help. Obviously, they want it, and they will lobby very hard to maintain the subsidies they get. But you know, at one point we were subsidizing the family farmers. But now there are not so many of those, and agribusiness dominates the agricultural industry.
Are you in favor of foreign aid?
Sure, I am in favor of foreign aid. It doesn't come to much, but I would certainly use it very carefully to support our allies and not our enemies.
Do you think foreign aid is redistribution of wealth?
I guess you could argue that, but it's probably not, because one of the problems with foreign aid is we give foreign aid to governments, and it often doesn't get to the people. So it may be redistributing to the wealth, but sometimes it's redistributing it only to government officials and government leaders in other countries.
Where does the money for the foreign aid come from?
It comes from the taxpayers.
So it's the American taxpayers are taxed, they're forced to pay taxes, and some of this money is used to give to foreigners or foreign governments. So wouldn't that be classical redistribution of wealth?
Well, it might be redistribution of the wealth in a way, but it's hardly classic.
So why are you in favor of it if you're against redistribution of wealth?
Because I'd make an exception. I don't regard it as redistribution as wealth. I mean, you say it is, and I say, well, I guess you could argue that, but because I think it's helpful to the country that we do that. Now, maybe not the way we're doing it currently, but I'm for it in some instances, yes.
But you do agree that the American taxpayer is taxed and the money is given to the foreigner, so it's redistributed from the Americans to the foreigner.
Well, look, any money that is taken from the taxpayer and goes to anybody is being redistributed to them. Yeah, you're drawing an absurd conclusion from what is popularly known in America as redistribution of the wealth.
Well,
and I'm not particularly interested in arguing this. I mean, arguing the point of whether foreign aid is redistribution of the wealth. You think so, and I guess you could argue that. I wouldn't.
Well, when the American taxpayer is taxed in order to fund the defense of the country, everybody benefits from that service of the defense of the country, the Army and the Air Force, etc. And so that's not redistributive, right?
You do want to argue this point.
No, I want to strike. I think is there a difference between? Let me ask you this question.
Have you ever heard of this? Let's agree to disagree. I disagree with you on this. I'm sorry, but I do, and you can continue to argue it all you want, but I disagree with you.
I just want to see.
Don't belabor it.
I'm asking. Can I ask you a question?
You can, but you've asked the same one about 10 times. I disagree with you.
Here's my question. Is there a fundamental difference between requiring somebody to pay for a service that's rendered to them personally on the one hand and requiring them to pay for a service that's rendered to somebody else?
Well, there is, but that includes a lot of domestic spending as well as spending on foreign aid.
Absolutely, but you do think there is a fundamental difference?
Well, there's a difference.
Well, if you're required to pay for my gym for my yeah.
Would you like to ask questions, or do you want to argue?
No, I'm asking. Oh, okay.
If you want to argue, then you can, but I don't think that gets us anywhere.
Well, let me ask you another question.
I'm glad to give them to you, but
I will ask you another.
Okay, good.
I'll ask you another question. Are you in favor of Medicaid?
Am I in favor of Medicaid? Not in its current form.
Okay. So how would you give the Medicaid?
Well, first I'd give it to the states and let them distribute it. I'm certainly against the extension of it that Obama did through the stimulus package passed in 2009.
Okay. So in your form, you would give it to the states, and then the states would distribute it. Mm-hmm. So is Medicaid in your form redistribution of wealth?
Yeah.
So why aren't you against it if you're against redistribution of wealth?
Well, because I think it's necessary to provide health care to people who can't afford it. And Medicaid has gotten completely out of control. The spending is destroying state budgets. But if you gave it to the states, then they could handle it on their own, and they would spend less. Would the earnings requirement go down? Yeah, I think it would. I mean, now it's become a program that's absurdly expensive and needs to be cut back on.
Do you think that the government should protect all peaceful citizens against people that want to use force to take their money?
Well, that includes all taxation.
Why do you say it includes all taxation?
Because it does. They're forced to pay taxes.
When you are forced to pay for a service that's rendered to you, on the one hand, is different than what you agreed before.
Why do you want to have an argument with me? I thought you wanted to ask me questions and get my opinions, and you want to have an argument. Now that's fine. I have other things to do that are actually more valuable to me than arguing with you.
Actually, I don't want to argue. What I would like to do is understand the reasoning that you use to support your position. In other words, I'm more interested in the reasoning.
Look, here's what you said to me. You said you wanted to discuss Obama's policies.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Was redistribution of wealth.
We
agreed on that, right?
We agreed that we would talk about Obama's policies. There are many of his policies.
Okay, so let's talk about foreign policy then, if you don't want to talk about domestic policy.
I'm not talking about any of these things. What I don't want to do is engage in an argument with you. And you may want to do that. I only have so much time on my hands.
Do you think it's a valuable thing to understand the reasoning that supports your opinions?
Yes.
So
I don't think it's valuable to you. I don't think I need to spell it all out to you.
I mean, for the viewers, isn't it important for them to not only understand your opinion, but also the reasoning that you use to support it?
For viewers? For viewers where?
Everywhere that we distribute the bottom line.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
So for people that are watching this interview, is it valuable? Would it be more valuable to them to not only know your opinion, where you stand on issues, but also the reasoning that supports it?
Well, so far, I don't know how long we've been talking. I don't think this interview would be of much value to anybody.
You don't think it's important to analyze redistribution of wealth and whether certain public policies involve redistribution of wealth or not?
We're going to have some. We have too much.
Right, but okay, so can we talk about foreign policy?